and Widdicombe and Zuby on the way, but time now for the clash. BBC Scotland's former editor Sarah Smith has said she was relieved to leave the bile, hatred and misogyny of Scottish politics for a less stressful job in the US. The daughter of former Labour leader John Smith, who is now BBC North America editor, said in an interview that she was demonised quite heavily amongst certain parts of the population. She added, "I worry a lot that the criticism, bile and hatred that I attract from some quarters is damaging the reputation of the BBC." Smith also said the BBC was facing enormous scrutiny as Nicola Sturgeon ramps up her campaign for a second independence referendum in 2023. Perhaps proving her point, SNP MSP James Dornan for Glasgow Cathcart responded by saying that she had imagined the hate and misogyny she suffered. He tweeted, "America would be the go-to place to escape all her imaginary woes then." He's since apologised for his poor choice of words, but has the independence referendum turned Scotland's politics toxic? ITV News Scotland correspondent Peter Smith said he had been called a traitor and Satan mostly by nationalists. And to be honest, I'm not surprised scheming Sturgeon and the SNP have let Scottish politics descend into a cesspit of hate and division. But what do you think? Has Nicola Sturgeon made Scottish politics more toxic than in America? Send me your thoughts to dan@gbnews.uk. Tweet me at GBNews, and while you're there, go and vote in our poll, and I'll bring you the results shortly. But first, to debate this, let me bring in the former SNP councillor, Austin Sheridan, former SNP member and now leader of the Scottish Libertarian Party, Tam Ladd, and the Scottish Conservative MSP and Shadow Community Safety Minister, Russell Finlay. So, Russell, let me start with you. Sturgeon has turned politics in Scotland toxic, hasn't she?
I don't know if it's entirely due to Nicola Sturgeon or whether it's more to do with the broader nationalist movement. This didn't just happen overnight. We saw back in 2014, during the independence referendum, Alex Salmond encouraging people to protest outside the BBC and to attack. There were attacks on journalism. It was pretty unseemly then, but it's not got any better. I'm not a politician to trade. I'm new to politics, and one of my motivations for becoming involved in Scottish politics was because I could see in Glasgow and in the rest of Scotland there was this toxic, divisive culture that has been so rightly articulated by Sarah Smith, who's a highly professional and well-respected journalist.
Tam, you were a member of the SNP in a former life. Was one of the reasons you left this toxicity?
No, the main reason that I left was because the SNP no longer believed in independence. It hasn't believed in independence since 1988. In fact, they've opposed independence. They opposed the UK leaving Europe, for example. And it was certainly taking a massive swing to the left. I mean, we talk of nationalism. I don't know any nationalists in the SNP anymore. They are socialists of the worst order. And this toxicity, there certainly is a toxic attitude towards Westminster, as if Westminster is the source of all evil in the UK. Well, trust me, I live in Edinburgh, and there's plenty of evil oozing out of Holyrood. We don't need any more help from Westminster on that front. So I quite sympathise with the idea that she felt that this atmosphere was toxic in Scotland. It always has been rather robust, and Scots are not backward at coming forward when it comes to giving opinions. But, Ms. Smith happens to work for the BBC, and I'm not a fan of the BBC for all sorts of reasons. And for somebody to roll down their window and shout stuff about lying and what lies are you going to tell tonight? Well, I think the last 2 years, as you've explored in your last segment, Dan, about the BBC and the absolute disinformation, misinformation they came out with. So that's not exactly, I'm not exactly in disagreement with what they said there. But in terms of, is it, okay, sorry.
Okay, no, I understand. I want to bring Austin Sheridan in. Austin, presumably you don't think this is the fault of the SNP, the Nationalists?
I don't think it's the fault of any elected politician in Scotland, if I'm being honest with you. I think that anyone would condemn abuse, regardless of political party. I believe Douglas Ross, I believe that Anas Sarwar and all the leaders in the Parliament would do the same. As I say, I mean, even if you look at the leadership of the Scottish Conservative Party, in actual fact, they have targeted the right person by calling on him to resign, who does say quite hateful things, who doesn't take his job seriously, and that's Boris Johnson. He's the guy that tries to subvert Scottish democracy. He's a guy that's made, arguably racist remarks and homophobic remarks. And he's a guy that doesn't take his political responsibility seriously. And 110% back Douglas Ross and I believe every MSP in their group by calling on him to resign.
Russell Finlay, this is a very interesting point, isn't it? Because here we are talking about the toxicity in Scottish politics.
Did you hear that noise, Dan? I'm going to interrupt you. I think I'm anticipating where you're going with this. That was the sound from Austin of SNP whataboutery.
Well, yeah, and also toxicity, isn't it? It's toxicity. It's like, let's not talk about what's going on in Scotland because Boris Johnson is a homophobe and a racist. Now, I don't believe Boris Johnson is a homophobe and a racist, but it's sort of irrelevant to this conversation, Russell.
I'm a Scottish MSP in Edinburgh. I'm not interested in whataboutery about Westminster. This is about a journalist at the BBC who spoke candidly about what she described as misogynistic, abusive, pretty threatening behaviour towards her. And in so doing,
I'm sorry. This is where you lose me.
She got the usual pile-in from the cybernats, but James Dornan isn't some lunatic with a Twitter account. James Dornan's an elected member of the Scottish Parliament, right?
True.
And furthermore, he didn't just make the initial tweet in which he suggested she'd imagined it all. He then went on to delete that tweet and say that she had perhaps exaggerated, and then finally get around to deleting that tweet, presumably after the SNP.
Yeah. And we know how they really feel. Tam, I'll let you come in here, but let me just pose a question to you, because I clearly do believe that the BBC should be criticised for their coverage over the past years. And I'm sure there's a lot to criticise about their coverage of Scotland. And in fact, I have criticised it before. But actually, for me, I criticised Sarah Smith time and again because when I saw her interview Nicola Sturgeon, she didn't ask any hard questions. So my point is it's about the toxicity, isn't it? You can criticise the BBC. Of course you can. But it's the abuse, it's the threats, and that's what you seem to get from the cybernats.
Well, okay. I mean, Ms. Smith is an experienced journalist. As far as I know, she was held at gunpoint by the UDA at one point. I'm sure she's a big girl and can take care of herself. And this is nothing but to what she's experienced before. Anybody in politics is going to get worse.
She says it's worse in Scotland.
Well, okay. That she's about to find out in America. Maybe it is worse. It's certainly bad at times. But yes, journalists need to be criticised. The misogyny point, I'm sorry, you lose me. The example that she gave, really, because people compared her to her father and said that she didn't have thoughts of her own, if that was John Smith's son, the exact same thing would have said. So she did experience misogyny, that's bad, but that was not any example of misogyny as far as I'm concerned. And I believe that the problem in Scotland and UK in general is not misogyny, it's misandry. Nicola Sturgeon said the world would be a better place if it was ruled by women. That is a sexist statement. That is misandry. So I don't think that misogyny is really the problem that it's made out to be. And it certainly wasn't in this instance.
Very good point, Tam. So let me put that to Austin. Austin, let's not talk about Boris Johnson for just 1 second. Let's talk about Nicola Sturgeon, your dear leader. Do you not concede that at times she is the one spreading toxicity, Austin?
Absolutely not. And I say I wouldn't accuse any Scottish political leader of doing that, of any political persuasion. I would say that Nicola Sturgeon, especially when it comes to women, is that she's made it a central plank, to encourage women into politics. She's made it a central plank to encourage other minorities into politics. I say the SNP is not just the only party doing that. If you look at the Scottish Conservative group in the Scottish Parliament, they are much more diverse. So I certainly wouldn't accuse any Scottish political leader of encouraging
English political leaders.
persuasion.
You've accused, so that's Scottish moral exceptionalism. That's appalling.
Austin, so just to clarify, you never think Nicola Sturgeon has said anything toxic?
No, what I do think, and it comes from all political persuasions, is there are people on the internet that are very abusive. I don't think it should be tolerated. I don't think that any politician of any party should tolerate it. But it's certainly not. It's certainly not exclusive to people that support independence. I mean, I was homophobic.
Fascinating debate. Thank you to all three of you. We will continue this Scottish conversation, so do all come back. That was former SNP councillor, big Nicola Sturgeon fan, Austin Sheridan, former SNP member, now leader of the Scottish Libertarian Party, Tam Ladd, and the Scottish Conservative MSP and Shallow Community Safety Minister, Russell Finlay. Thank you all